Alright, so we're looking at a limiting reagent problem here, and the problem is that 100.0 grams of FeCrO22, we're going to react that with 50.00 grams of K2CO3, and what we're going to do is figure out which reagent is used up first or which one is the limiting reagent. Now in order to do this, what we'll do is we'll figure out the number of moles of FeCrO22 we have first, and then divide that by the number of moles we're using in the reaction equation. We're always dealing with reactants with this problem, and the other reactant we're using is K2CO3. We'll figure out the number of moles of that, divide that by the number of moles in the reaction equation, and what we'll end up with is 2 mole ratios. Whichever one has the smallest mole ratio, that will be the limiting reagent. That will be the one that's used up first. Anyway, so in the same vein as what we've been talking about, I'll just use my cheese sandwich analogy. So 2 bread plus 1 cheese would give one sandwich. So if we had, say, 12 bread and we had 9 cheese, I'm hoping you can see that the most we could get would be 6 sandwiches. That would be it. Now the reason for that is because we can see that 12 divided by 2, and we know to divide it by 2 because of the 2 here. 12 divided by 2 would be 6 sandwiches. That's how much we could get from the bread. From the cheese we could possibly get 9, but because we don't have enough bread for 9 sandwiches, then the maximum we can get is just 6 sandwiches. So in this instance the limiting reagent is bread, and the dividing by the 2 here is analogous to what we're going to do over here. Once we get the number of moles, we're going to divide by the number of moles in the reaction equation. Alright, so starting out with the 100.0 grams of FeCrO22, our first step is to find the number of moles we have, so we know that grams of this will go on the bottom. And we know moles will go on top. And we know that 1 mole of this will react with, 1 mole of this is equal to this many grams, 223.85. That's the molecular weight. So those two things equal each other, times, and a line now is going to be 1 over the number of moles of FeCrO22 there are in the reaction equation. There's 4 of those, so it's 4 moles FeCrO22. And that's going to give us 0.1117. So that's the mole ratio that we're dealing with in that case. Now over here, when we did them times 1 over 4 moles, what we're effectively doing is taking the number of moles we calculate here and dividing by 4 moles. So multiplying by 1 over something is the same as dividing by it. Now we're going to do the same thing over here with our K2CrO3. We're starting out with grams. So we know grams of K2CO3 go on the bottom. We know moles of K2CO3 go on top because that's what we want to find. The relationship between these, 1 mole is equal to this many grams, 138.21. Times, again we're going to divide by the number of moles in the reaction. It's going to be 8 moles of K2CO3. And that's going to give us 0.04522 as our mole ratio. So as you can see, this one has the smaller mole ratio, so that means the limiting reagent is going to be K2CO3.